Prabhupada emphasized work. Yet, what was that work? At least for Srila Prabhupada, propagating Krishna consciousness was samadhi itself. Samadhi didn't have to be limited to sitting in a solitary place. The full meaning of samadhi implied complete absorption in the loving service of Krishna. With the senses, mind, and intelligence fixed in trance. Thus in samadhi, one could be active, traveling, preaching, distributing back to guided magazines, chanting in the streets. If a devotee always thought of Krishna and worked on behalf of Krishna, then he was the topmost yogi. This had also been Lord Krishna's advice to Arjuna. Remember me, and at the same time fight. Srila Prabhupada was the emblem of active samadhi, always hearing about, glorifying, and remembering Krishna, and always fighting as a soldier on behalf of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada's preaching in Nairobi had been especially active. He had established Krishna consciousness in a new city, setting the example for Brahmananda Swami to emulate, showing the standard for spreading Krishna consciousness throughout the continent. And Shyam Sundar was keeping his GVC godbrothers informed of Prabhupada's amazing activities. With it.
I think we actually finished.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah,
didn't join today.
We're on to the next. We're on to the next volume, actually.
You're on the next chapter already?
Yeah, next chapter.
Oh, you left it here on chapter.
No, that Kale.
Right, I thought we finished the book last night.
Which is the last one we are reading, no? This one is done actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're on to the second volume.
Oh, we are in the second volume today.
Unless we're going to read.
What is this one?
The forwards.
Forward we don't have to read. Yeah.
But yeah. So we're on to volume 2.
Then start the new one then.
I just like hearing you read. That's why I didn't stop you.
Yeah, volume one here. Yeah. You have to start a new one. So for Lilamrt. No, here library. Yeah. Right. What happened to our other devotees? Oh, I saw some holiday season going on. Hare Krishna. So we'll be starting the volume 2. You start.
Volume 2, chapter 37. The land is yours. Calcutta, March 1971.
This is a very inspiring volume, I'm sure. Good.
It was midnight. Srila Prabhupada sat on a pillow behind his low desk. His light, the only one in the building. All the other devotees were in bed. On the desk before him rested the dictating machine and a volume of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bengali commentary. A small frame picture of a spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, sat between 2 small vases of roses and asters. On the floor beyond the desk was the broad mat covered with white cotton fabric, where a few hours before, devotees and guests had sat. But now he was alone. Although usually he retired at 10, rising 3 or 4 hours later to translate, tonight he had not rested, and his Bhagavatam lay closed, his dictating machine covered. He had sent 2 of his disciples, Damal Krishna and Bali Mardana, to purchase land in Mayapur. 6 days had passed, however, and still they had neither returned nor sent word. He had told them not to return on their completed transaction, but 6 days was more than enough time. He was anxious, thinking constantly of his 2 disciples. A breeze arrived, carrying the fragrance of neem trees through the open window. The night was becoming cool, and Prabhupada wore a light chadar around his shoulders. Absorbed in thought, leaning against the white bolster pillow, he paid little attention to the familiar sights in his room. A clay jug with drinking water sat beside him, and a potted tulsi plant sat upon a small wooden pedestal. The electricity, off most of the day and night, was now on, and moths and other insects hovered around the bare bulb overhead. A lizard patrolled the ceiling, occasionally darting forward near the light to capture an insect. Why were Tamal Krishna and Bali Mardana taking so long? It had been more than just the wait of 6 days. He had been trying to obtain land in Mayapur for years, and this time the prospects had been excellent. He had clearly instructed Tamal Krishna and Bali Mardana, and by now they should have returned. The delay could mean a complication or even be. The land they were trying for was a 9 bigha on Bhaktisiddhanta Road, less than a mile from the birth site of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Sikh brothers, Muslim farmers who owned the plot, had been asking a high price. Only recently had a Calcutta lawyer familiar with Navadvip been able to seriously negotiate a fair price. The Sikh brothers had settled for 14,500 rupees, and Prabhupada had authorized withdrawal of the funds from his bank in Krishnanagar. Thus, Tamala Krishna and Bali Mardana had left for Mayapur, while Prabhupada had remained in Calcutta, carrying on with his affairs, but thinking often of the activities of his disciples in Mayapur. His mission was very important to him, and he kept them in his mind, personally blessing them with his concern. So Prabhupada is in it's March 1971, and he's in Calcutta. And usually Prabhupada would take rest and for 3-4 hours, and then he would start translating. But this special night, he had actually his Bhagavatam was closed and his dictating machine was covered. That's because he had sent 2 of his disciples, Tamal Krishna and Bali Mardana, to go and purchase land in Mayapur. And they had been gone for 6 days, and still they haven't received, Prabhupada hasn't received any word from them, or they haven't returned. And Prabhupada was thinking, because he had given the specific instructions, 6 days was more than enough, and he was very anxious, and he was thinking constantly of his disciples. And Prabhupada, so this night Prabhupada was just sitting down, and he was completely absorbed in thought. And he was still thinking, why are they taking so long? Because for them, it could have been 6 days, but Prabhupada had been waiting for many years to try to purchase land in Mayapur. And Prabhupada's thinking that because of this delay, that means there could be a complication or even danger. And this land was a 9 bigha.
I think some few acres. Anyone remember we had read this? I don't know how it's coming at details. You remember we read this before. The land in Mayapur has been purchased, but I don't know in volume 2. I think they got more details, started writing on this. I don't know. I don't remember how many acres, but it'll come in.
9 bigha plot, and it was less than a mile from the birth site of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the owners of the plot who were selling it were the Sikh brothers, and they were Muslim farmers, and they were asking for a high price. And but through a Kolkata lawyer, the devotees were able to negotiate a fair price, and the brothers were asking for 14,500 rupees. And Prabhupada authorized that withdrawal, and his 2 disciples had left for Mayapur. But Prabhupada remained in Calcutta, but he still hasn't received any news. But he was always thinking of his disciples and how the purchase of the land will come through, because that mission was very important to him. Because Prabhupada always wanted a temple in Mayapur.
Prabhupada wanted an ISKCON center in Mayapur. It was a desire that had increased within him as his movement had increased throughout the years. He could easily visit or live in Mayapur. That was no problem. But he needed a place for his disciples. His spiritual master had ordered him to preach in the West. And now, with the success of his Krishna Consciousness Society, the Western Vaishnavas required a center in Mayapur where they could reside and worship and receive the immense benefit of the Holy Dham. Such a beautiful thinking, spiritual matter. He's thinking of all the devotees who gave their life for the moment. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had stressed a great importance of Mayapur, and some of his sannyas disciples had temples there. Why shouldn't the International Society for Krishna Consciousness also be able to take shelter of Mayapur? Since birth, Prabhupada had been aware of the significance of Lord Chaitanya and his Dham. Sri Mayapur. He had grown up in Calcutta, where everyone knew of Lord Chaitanya, and because his father, Gaur Mande, had been a pure devotee of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya, from childhood he had sung the Bengali songs of Gaur Nitai and their pastimes in the land of Gauda. He had imbibed deeply the teachings and pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, especially after meeting his spiritual master in Calcutta in 1922. Lord Chaitanya had spent his first 24 years in Mayapur and Navadip. Yet, since his manifest pastimes there almost 500 years ago, the places of those pastimes had been obscured. The Lord's birth site lost and his teachings confused and misused. Despite the disciplined line of pure devotees from Lord Chaitanya, not until the advent of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the father of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, did Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement and pure teachings begin to emerge. Bhaktivinoda Thakur published many books and preached or to re-establish the intellectual, moral, and spiritual integrity of Chaitanya Vaishnavism. He researched and explored the land of Navadip, ascertaining the exact birth site of the Lord. Citing Vedic evidence, he established that many previous incarnations of Vishnu had enacted pastimes in Navadip. Not only in Bhaktivinoda Thakur, not only did Bhaktivinoda Thakur document Navadip's past glory, but he also foresaw its glorious future, when a religion based on the teachings of Lord Chaitanya would emerge and spread throughout the world. And when European and American Vaishnavas would throng to Navadip to join the Bengali brothers in chanting Jai Sachinandana, the time would come, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote, when in the land of Navadip, on the plain of Ganges, a magnificent temple would arise, proclaiming to the world the glories of Lord Chaitanya. All glories to Lord Chaitanya, the son of Sachi. So this is the situation. For devotees has come. They don't know what is Prabhupada's mind and his experiences, but now he fulfilled the desire. He wanted to fulfill the desire of his spiritual master to go and preach in West. He did it. He could have stayed in Mayapur itself, but he was thinking of his disciples. Because I preached, now there's a place needed so that the devotees can really, leave their practice, serve, and leave the body also. They'll make the dham as their home. For them, Prabhupada wanted an ISKCON center in Mayapur. So he has other devotees also, devotees also have their centers, but why not ISKCON should have? So that's why deep desire for his Western disciples, they can come and take. But Prabhupada knew the glory of this from childhood. Lord Chaitanya is dham in Mayapur because he grew up in Calcutta. And Gaur Mande is a pure devotee of Lord Chaitanya. From childhood, he sung the Bengali songs of Gaur Nitai and their pastimes in the land of Gauda. He imbibed deeply the teachings of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, especially after meeting his spiritual master in Calcutta in 1992. This Prabhupada's experiences. Now, Lord Chaitanya had spent first 24 years in Mayapur and Navadip. However, even though he spent this, it was 500 years back, but due course of time, those pastimes has been obscured and the birth site has been lost. And teachings also got manipulated and confused, polluted in that way. So it's not until Bhaktivinoda Thakur who actually came and re-established those pure teachings. Then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, then Prabhupada under his directions. So the pure teachings has been re-established. And so not only that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I hope all of you know, because the birthplace has been kind of lost, where Lord Chaitanya, people have been misusing, representing another place as Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. It's Krishna Nagar or something, right? So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was a magistrate, he was very learned. He really, when he got the opportunity to rule that place, administer that place, he studied everything. He took out the papers of Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. Then only Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually found the new birthplace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with the help of Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, a spiritual master in one sense. So that's where the exact birthplace of the Lord Chaitanya has been ascertained. Now it is Mayapur. Earlier it was another island near Krishnanagar, Navadip. So not only did Bhaktivinoda Thakur document Navadip's past glory, he also saw the future, how it will happen. The Krishna conscious movement will emerge. The people from throughout the world will come. All the European American Vaishnavas will come. They will join the Bengali devotees and sing Jai Sachinanda. And that's the fact. Playing two temples in the Ganges, a magnificent temple would arise, proclaiming the world the glories of Lord Chaitanya. That's what TOVP temple which is coming up, and it is being built by the Western, mostly devotees together, Western and Bengal devotees. And so many devotees are residing in Mayapur now, especially Russians and other devotees, become a center, spiritual center for the whole world. So, Ajay, you please.
Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, carrying out the desires of his father and preceptor, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, had formed the Gaudiya Math for propagating the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and the glories of Navadipa Dhamma. He had induced a wealthy disciple to spend his fortune for erecting a temple at Lord Chaitanya's birth site in Mayapur, and he had constructed a kirtan hall commemorating the place of Lord Chaitanya's kirtans. He had also constructed his own residence in Mayapur. He had built temples throughout India, 64 in all, but because he wanted the English-speaking world, especially to take to Lord Chaitanya's movement, he had emphasized as first priority the publishing and distributing of Krishna-conscious literature. Srila Prabhupada, sitting in his room in the Calcutta temple, shared the great vision of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Yet to enact this great vision, he had to take practical steps, and he was content to take them in the most humble way. A devotee should not simply daydream, expecting Krishna to accomplish everything with miracles. Prabhupada, however, was not dreaming idly. Working for years alone in India, he had held his plan of going to the West, and Krishna had at last fulfilled that desire. In America, in whatever circumstances and with whatever small facility Krishna had provided, he had preached. And slowly, step by step, he had met with success, realizing his vision of a worldwide society of devotees. Always he had kept his greater vision in mind, as every step forward had given him deeper satisfaction and had brought him closer to fulfilling his mission. Prabhupada sometimes told the story of a poor potter who dreamed of expanding his business and becoming fabulously rich. As the potter slept one night, he dreamed of how much land and how many houses he would have, and how he would have a beautiful wife. When the potter considered that perhaps his wife would quarrel with him, he became angry and said, "If my wife fights with me, I will kick her." And kicking, he broke the only 2 pots in his stock and was reduced to nothing. Whether chanting or writing or reading or preaching, Prabhupada had been absorbed in his plans for spreading Krishna consciousness and fulfilling the dream of the past acharyas. Now he was anxious to complete the next step, and for this he was waiting up past midnight, meditating on his 2 disciples and their important mission. So it talks about how, kind of the importance of Mayapur in the history of Krishna consciousness, and how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Prabhupada's spiritual master, had started the Gaudiya Math there and opened 64 temples across India, but also erected a temple for Lord Chaitanya in Mayapur because that's where he was born, as well as a big kirtan hall because that's where Lord Chaitanya held his kirtans. And he lived, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had lived there as well. But even with all that, with how much work he did in India, he still said, hey, the number one priority is the West, is propagating Krishna consciousness to the West and in English. So, as Prabhupada's sitting up there in his room, he's reflecting on, on the same thing, on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's mission and how, everything that he's done up to that point, and how, he can't, like how you have to be a man of action to get it done. Just sitting and daydreaming on it, you'll never get any closer to accomplishing the goal. So he talks about how all the long years he worked in India, and publishing Back to Godhead by himself, and getting the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam published all by himself, and then he went to the West, and just all of these things, just step by step, he just kept going and going, and finally he was able to realize, he realized his vision of getting ISKCON essentially. And then he talks about a story about the potter who would dream about riches and a beautiful wife, but then he realizes, like, hey, but my wife might fight with me, and if he does, I'll kick her. And in his sleep, he kicks the only 2 pots he has and breaks them, and now he's got nothing, because when he should have been acting on choosing his dream, on accomplishing that dream, he was just daydreaming away, and it left him in ruins. So it says, hey, whether Prabhupada was chanting or he's writing or he's reading or he's out preaching, everything he did was always, in the mission of spreading Krishna consciousness and, accomplishing the goal of his spiritual masters before him.
Nice. Isn't it a great point? We are devotees, but we cannot say expect that of Krishna will automatically do manifest everything. It's not a daydreaming. We have to be very practical, and we strive to fulfill mission, working with our body, mind, and intelligence, everything. I see, when we are trying to go build a place in Dover, and there are a lot of daydreaming of the people. Oh, our temple should look like this, so big hall and everything. I'm dreaming for so many years. But when it comes to work on it, nobody is taking any action. So I hope our devotees will know this. Now, we dream, we aspire to serve, but there's action has to be there also. Okay. Vijayan and Prabhu.
As Prabhupada sat, wrapped in thought, only sounds were the usual sounds of the night. Mice within the walls, a brahmachari snoring on the veranda, and in the distance, a night watchman making his rounds, his stick striking the street. There were no cars, and only an occasional wooden rickshaw clattered along the pothole street. Prabhupada wondered if perhaps his boys had been robbed. Before sending them off, he had shown Tamala Krishna how to carry money around his waist in a makeshift cloth money belt. But it had been a great deal of money, and robberies were not uncommon around Navadvipa. Or perhaps there had been some other delay. Sometimes in land negotiations involving large sums of money, the court would require that a clerk record the denomination and serial number of every note exchanged, or perhaps the train had broken down. Suddenly, Prabhupada heard footsteps on the stairs. Someone opened the outer door and now walked along the veranda just outside. A soft knock. Yes, who is it? Prabhupada asked. Tamala Krishna entered and prostrated himself before Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada asked, what is your news? Tamala Krishna looked triumphantly. The land is yours. Prabhupada leaned back with a sigh. All right, he said. Now you can take rest. London, August 1971. Prabhupada had asked the Indian High Commissioner for the United Kingdom to petition Prime Minister Indira Gandhi to attend ISKCON's upcoming cornerstone laying ceremony in Mayapur. Already, Prabhupada had instructed all his GBC secretaries to attend the ceremony, and he had asked the devotees to invite many prominent citizens of Calcutta. Writing to his disciples in India, he said that if they could not get Indira Gandhi to come, they should at least get the governor of Bengal, Sri S.S. Dhawan. Meanwhile, Prabhupada was meeting in London with several of his disciples, experienced in architecture and design. He wanted them to draft plans for his Mayapur project. Naranarayana had built Rathayatra carts and designed temple interiors. Rancher had studied architecture, and Bhavananda had been a professional designer. But Prabhupada himself conceived the plans for the Mayapur buildings. Then told his three-man committee to provide sketches and an architect's model. He would immediately begin raising funds and securing support in India for the project. To the devotees who had Prabhupada's plans, this seemed the most ambitious ISKCON project ever. While taking his morning walks in Russell Square, Prabhupada would point to various buildings and ask how high they were. Finally, he announced one morning that the main temple in Mayapur should be more than 300 feet high. Mayapur's monsoon floods and sandy soil would create unique difficulties, he said, and the building would have been built on a special foundation, a sort of floating raft. A civil engineer later confirmed this. The first building, Prabhupada said, should be a large guest house, 4 stories high, and is design, although not strictly conforming to any one of school of architecture, resembled most that of Rajasthan. He wanted a pink and rust-colored building with many arches and wide marble veranda on each floor except the ground floor. The building should run east to west, so that the sun would pass lengthwise over it and not shine directly into the building's broad front. Southerly breezes would cool the guest house in summer. The building should be equipped with electric fans and lights, modern toilets and showers. The room should be furnished, spacious and well ventilated. So this describes like how Prabhupada was like bit wondering and worried about and he was eagerly waiting for the update on the Mayapur land deal. So basically it describes the night which had like very usual sounds with the mice within the walls and brahmachari snoring, and then the night watchman making his rounds, and also there was like no cars and only occasional wooden rickshaw. And Prabhupada also wondered whether if his boys were robbed. But he was confident that he has already given some instructions to Tamil Krishna how to carry the money around his waist. But he thought that it was a great deal of money, and Navadvipa is not uncommon. I mean, in Navadvipa, robberies are not uncommon. So he was thinking like various thoughts actually, like about whether if they were robbed, and also he was like thinking maybe if there is a delay in the land negotiations and the court may ask the clerk to record all the denomination if the amount is huge. So he was thinking like multiple possibilities for the late and the delay, and suddenly he heard that a knock in his door, and it was Tamil Krishna who entered, and Prabhupada looked after him for the news, and he mentioned in a single sentence, the land is yours. And the Prabhupada was like very much convinced, and he said like now Tamil Krishna can take rest. So Prabhu, can you go a little bit down? Yeah. So now since the land is successfully acquired, now Prabhupada worked on the opening ceremony or the corner laying stone, and he was trying to bring the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi for that ceremony, and he told that the devotees should try their best to bring Indira Gandhi. Otherwise, at the worst case, they should bring the Governor of Bengal, Sri S.S. Dhawan. And Prabhupada, like when he was in London, he was meeting with several disciples and who are experienced in architecture and design, and he asked them to draft a plan for the Mayapur project. And there are devotees who are already expertise in several areas, for building the Ratha Yatra carts, Narayana became an expert, and for designing the temple interiors, Rancher had studied the architecture, and Bhavananda became a professional designer. So he has asked the three-man committee to provide sketches on the architect's model, and he immediately thought of raising the funds and securing the support. Those disciples, on hearing the Prabhupada's plan, they felt that it seems to be the most ambitious ISKCON project ever. And also, while Prabhupada, as usual, while he was going for a morning walk in Russell Square, he was asking to his disciples about the height of the various buildings, and then after asking all the answers, and finally one day Prabhupada mentioned that the temple in Mayapur should be like 300 feet high, And the reason, because he was like very keen, and he has good knowledge about the environment over there, because Mayapur's monsoon floods and the sandy soil will create a lot of unique difficulties. So he was very clear on how to create a building and the temple over there, considering the other external factors. And also, the foundation of the temple was a kind of a floating raft, and a civil engineer confirmed that. And Prabhupada are also given the plan, like the first building should be a large guest house, which should be of 4 stories, and it should be he also given the colors and the shape, like a pink rust colored, and with multiple arches. And he also mentioned the direction and the direction of the building, like it should have like many arches, and the building should run from east to west, so that the sun can pass lengthwise, and it will not shine directly on the broad front of the building. And also in the summer, the breezes would cool the guest house. So he has given instruction that the building should be equipped with electric fans and lights, and with all the modern amenities, and the room should be furnished, spacious, and well ventilated.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, everybody is finding so far inspiring to hear on this. 300, you want 300 feet height. Wow. Bhavanand is still assisting with the TOVP now, right? He's part of the TOVP project. He's leading that project. Okay. Sai Kiran Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. The guest house should be built as soon as possible, Prabhupada said, and then the other buildings would follow. He wanted residential buildings for 500 devotees, a large prasadam hall seating several thousand, a kitchen complex, and a goshala, a shelter for the cows that would pasture in nearby fields. In time, ISKCON would acquire adjoining land and develop parks with flower garlands, trees and shrubs, fountains, walkways, and arbors. The main building, the colossal Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, was to be no less than 300 feet high and costing perhaps tens of millions of dollars. Prabhupada's description astounded the architects as well as the devotees. It sounded grander than the United States Capitol or St. Peter's Cathedral. The temple's central dome would house a three-dimensional model of the universe. The design, however, would be based on the Vedic description and would depict not only the material universe but also the spiritual universe. Entering the main hall, a person would look up and see the planets situated just as Srimad Bhagavatam describes, beginning with the hellish planets, then the middle planets wherein the earth is situated, and then the heavenly planets of the demigods, and then Brahmaloka, the highest planet in the material world. Above Brahmaloka, the observer would see the abode of Lord Shiva, and above that the spiritual sky or Brahmajyoti. Within the spiritual effulgence of the Brahmajyoti would be the self-illuminating Vaikuntha planets, inhabited by eternally liberated souls. And highest of all would be the supreme planet of Krishna Loka, where God in his original eternal form enjoys his pastimes with his most confidential devotees. The temple would also house a miniature palace in which the deities of Radha and Krishna would reside, surrounded by silks and pillars of silver, gold, and jewels. The Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir and the Mayapur city would be ISKCON's world headquarters. And why such a fabulous architectural wonder as this in such an obscure part of the world? The answer, Prabhupada explained, was that Mayapur was actually not obscure. It seemed so only from the mundane perspective. To mundane vision, that which was central seemed remote. The soul in the next life seemed remote, while the body and immediate sense gratification seemed central. By establishing the temple of human understanding in Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada would be directing the materialistic world's attention back to the true center. So here it is explains, first they would, Prabhupada explains the first building would be a large guest house, which would be 4 stories high. It would follow the Rajasthan architecture, basically the building should run east to west, so the sun would pass lengthwise over it and not shine directly into the building's broad front. Then this guest house should be built as soon as possible, and after that, the other buildings would follow. And the residential buildings, Prabhupada had plans for 500 devotees, a large prasadam hall seating several thousand, a goshala, and a kitchen complex. And then they would also acquire adjacent lands and develop parks and flower gardens. The main building, the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, was going, Prabhupada's plan was it should be no less than 300 feet high, and it would cost tens of millions of dollars. And everyone was astounded when Prabhupada described this one. And it also sounded like the United States Capitol, or it was as grand as the St. Peter's Cathedral. It would the central dome would house a three-dimensional mode of the universe. So when a person would enter the main hall, if he looks up, he would see the planets as described in Srimad Bhagavatam. First, it would start with the hellish planets, then the middle planets where the earth is situated, and then the heavenly planets. And then Brahmaloka, which is the supreme planet in the material world. And above the Brahmaloka, we would see the abode of Lord Shiva, and above that, the spiritual sky, or Brahma Jyoti. And on top of everything, it would be Krishna Loka, where Supreme Lord is enjoying with his most confidential devotees. He enjoys his pastimes. Then there would also be a palace in which the deities of Radha and Krishna would reside. The Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir and the Mayapur city would be ISKCON's world headquarters. And also Prabhupada here explains like why select such an obscure part of the world for this for the ISKCON's headquarters. And it is explained here that it's not actually obscure. It seems to be obscure from the mundane perspective. And same thing, like the soul and the next life, they seem, the focus is always on the body and sense gratification, and soul and the next life, they seem remote. But here, Prabhupada wants everyone to come back to the true center by establishing the Mayapur temple, the temple in Mayapur. And he would want to bring all the materialistic world's attention back to the true center.
Such a wonderful lessons we are learning. Did you see the smart idea? First, creating the facilities for the devotees. Once they will come, their needs are taken care, bodily needs, have nice prasadam hall and everything. Then the focus goes on the temple building. That's very smart way of doing. So, and very lot of learning lessons from this. Yes, who is going to now? Prasanthi.
Any sincere visitor would be charmed by the beauty of ISKCON's Mayapur project and would perceive that here indeed was a spiritual world and devotees living in Mayapur by remaining constantly immersed in singing Hare Krishna Kirtana and discussing the philosophy of Hare Krishna consciousness. Would be able to convince any intelligent visitor that the teachings of the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were the highest truth. The devotees would explain the philosophy of the absolute truth, which would enable visitors to comprehend actual spiritual truth beyond sectarian religious dogma. Furthermore, the conscious Hare Krishna Kirtana and blissful devotees engaged in wide varieties of services to Lord Krishna would demonstrate that Bhakti Yoga was the simplest, most direct process for meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. While staying in ISKCON's Mayapur city, a person would quickly become a devotee of the Lord and begin chanting and dancing in ecstasy. Srila Prabhupada was demonstrating how the world could be spiritualized by linking material things with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, through Bhakti Yoga, and why shouldn't such spiritual feats surpass the achievements of the materialists. Prabhupada was sorry to learn through the Indian High Commissioner that the Prime Minister could not attend the cornerstone laying ceremony in Mayapur. Yet, he took it as Krishna's desire. He said he would invite a prominent Vaishnava to officiate, or he might do it himself. On the whole, he wrote, it was Lord Chaitanya's desire that a Vaishnava should lay down the cornerstone instead of asking some material man or woman to perform the holy work. The monsoons came and the Ganges spilled over her banks, flooding the entire ISKCON Mayapur property. Achyutananda Swami had built a straw and bamboo hut where Prabhupada was soon to stay, but the waters rose until Achyutananda Swami had to live in the bamboo rafters. He wrote Prabhupada that had it not been for Bhaktisiddhanta road, the damage would have been extensive. Prabhupada replied, the elevated road that runs before ISKCON's property and birthplace of Lord Chaitanya serving as a dike against the Ganges. Yes. Yes, we were saved by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta road. We shall always expect to be saved by His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada. Always pray to His lotus feet. Whatever success we have had in preaching Lord Chaitanya's mission all over the world is only due to His mercy. So Prabhupada explains that any visitor who comes to ISKCON Mayapur, looking at the beauty of that project, he would perceive that as a spiritual world, and they can see the devotees constantly immersed in Hare Krishna Kirtana and also in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Any visitor would understand the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the highest truth, and they will understand, the devotees can explain the philosophy, and also they can understand that the spiritual truth is beyond the sectarian religious dogma. And Bhakti Yoga is the simplest and the most direct process of meditating on God. And this Mayapur city would quickly become famous, and devotees can come here, chant and dance in ecstasy, and they can quickly become devotees. And Prabhupada is demonstrating how the world can be spiritualized, and the spiritual activities there can surpass the materialists. And Prabhupada soon learned that Prime Minister could not come, Indira Gandhi could not come for laying the cornerstone. So he thought of inviting a prominent Vaishnava or do it himself, and took it as Krishna's desire that only Vaishnava should do the cornerstone laying. And he also soon learned that as the monsoons came, Ganges spilled and there were floods, and the water came into the property of ISKCON. Even the hut that was built for Prabhupada, that was also immersed in the floods, and the property was a bit protected because of the Bhaktisiddhanta road. And Prabhupada explains that to take it as the mercy of the spiritual master. It's only because of the divine grace of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that it was saved.
Nice. It's in the way it is on the other side of the road. On the other side of the road, I think a lot of water comes. So the road is kind of divides the Ganges up to some extent, and during rain season, it used to be flood all the time. Have anyone have seen Devotees going to serve the deities Mangalarti in a boat. In the video you have seen, devotees going for morning Mangalarti, puja is going and worshipping Radha Krishna in a boat. You haven't seen, right? I will send sometime. That's funny. Whole thing gets flooded with water. None of you have seen that? So you should see. You have seen it, Vasant? So you should see that. I'll try to find out and send you. But now water has come down, but for a while didn't flood. But otherwise, flood is very common in Mayapur. Ganges water would come. Okay, who's Nipa, right? Nipa, you please read.
Hare Krishna. New Delhi, November 10, 1971. The car pulled out from the crowd in front of the airport terminal. Prabhupada sitting in the back seat, his bamboo cane against his knee, his hand in his bead bag, talked with his Delhi disciples. As the car moved through the broad avenues of New Delhi, Prabhupada removed two knee-length garlands from around his neck and placed them beside him on the seat. It was midday and November climate was pleasant. Prabhupada had arrived from Calcutta just in time for the 10-day ISKCON Pandal festival beginning the next day. One of the devotees mentioned how fitting it had been that the mayor of New Delhi, Mr. Hans Raj Gupta, had greeted Prabhupada at the airport. Prabhupada smiled. In his speech before Mayor Gupta and a gathering at the airport, Prabhupada had explained India's duty of performing welfare work for the rest of the world. He had also described how at the age of 25 he had met his Guru Maharaj and had then received the order to carry Lord Chaitanya's message to the English-speaking world. Explaining why he had waited until he was 70 before going west, he had remarked, I was trying to become a successful tool for preaching Lord Chaitanya's message. Hundreds of thousands of preachers were needed now, as the Krishna consciousness movement was spreading throughout the world, and the black men are also dancing, Prabhupada had said, and they are also the Indian people. They are asking the Indian people why you and the Swamis do not give us this sublime method. Delhi was the third Indian city Prabhupada had visited since his return from Africa a month ago. His first stop, Bombay, had begun roughly. Shyam Sundara had neglected to carry Srila Prabhupada's inoculation card, so immigration officials had denied Prabhupada entry into India, quarantining him at the Bombay Airport Hospital for 10 days. Confined to a suite with an adjoining veranda overlooking a garden, Prabhupada had resigned himself to a more limited sphere of activity. Still, each morning after breakfast, he had conducted a dialogue with Shyam about certain leading Western philosophers. Shyam would present a particular philosophy, and Prabhupada would discuss it in the light of Vedic view. Then, with only one day left before the end of the 10-day quarantine period, the inoculation card had arrived, and Prabhupada had been released.
Quarantine was not new. Looks like it was there before Prabhupada's time.
10-day quarantine. So it was New Delhi, November 10, 1971, when the car pulled out from the crowd in the airport terminal, and Prabhupada was there in the car sitting in the back with his bamboo cane, and he was still having his bead bag in the hand, and he was talking to the Delhi disciples. And then he removes a knee-length flower garland from his neck and places beside the seat. And it was November, climate was pleasant, and Prabhupada arrived from Calcutta for the 10-day ISKCON Pandal festival beginning the next day. And one of the devotees mentioned how fitting it had been that Mayor of New Delhi, Mr. Hansraj, was there to greet Mr. Prabhupada at the airport, and Prabhupada smiled. And in the speech before Mayor Gupta and a gathering, Prabhupada explained India's duty to perform the welfare work for the rest of the world. And he described how he had found his guru at the age of 25, Guru Maharaj, and received the order from Lord Chaitanya to spread the message to the English-speaking world. Explaining why he had waited for the age of 70 to go to West was like he was trying to become successful tool to preach Lord Chaitanya's message. And hundreds of thousands of preachers were needed as the Krishna consciousness movement was spreading throughout the world. And he also explains that the black men were also dancing, and Prabhupada said, and then They are asking Indian people why you Swamis are not share the sublime method. And Delhi was like the third Indian city Prabhupada had visited since his return from Africa. He stopped at Bombay, and Shyamsundra had neglected to carry Srila Prabhupada's inoculation card. So he was quarantined in Bombay airport for 10 days. And Prabhupada, though confined in a suite which was like adjoining to veranda, he was overlooking at the garden, and he was limited to a sphere of activity. And each morning after breakfast, he would have a dialogue with Shyamasundara about leading Western philosophers. Shyamasundara would present a particular philosophy and Prabhupada would discuss it. So then after the 10-day quarantine, the inoculation card arrived and Prabhupada was released from the quarantine.
Anyone knows why inoculation card? What is inoculation card? Do you know? Then why he will be quarantined?
I think because after he would get the shot, there's a chance he actually get
It's coming from Africa?
Yeah, malaria and stuff like that.
I don't know. I was just curious to why he's coming from Africa that time needed probably. I don't know. From Africa? So now we understand why Shyamsundar Prabhu is writing volumes of books. 3 books he's writing, his experiences, beautiful books, personal experiences. So no wonder why he spent so much of time with Prabhupada. Okay, who did anyone, my turn? Where? This one, right? Okay. Immediately he had left for Calcutta and a series of kirtan and lecture programs at Deshpriya Park. He had stayed in Calcutta 2.5 weeks, preaching the location of the ISKCON temple at Albert Road in the heart of what had once been a Sahab European section. I've been there actually, we have been there. Now I'm bringing the Sahabs back to the Sahab quarter, Prabhupada had said. But this time they are all becoming as Vaishnavas. You should never give up this place. Some of the Calcutta devotees had complained to Srila Prabhupada that the temple was being mismanaged and that due to insufficient income, their diet was inadequate. When Prabhupada had questioned the temple leaders, one devotee replied, Srila Prabhupada, I was simply trying to execute your will. Is it my will? Prabhupada had asked, that all the devotees should be disturbed? He had settled the differences, arranged for an improved diet, and had even recommended a democratic election of temple officers. But he had also explained that because Krishna consciousness was such an important mission, the devotees should cooperate even if there is discrepancies. The material world is like an ocean, and he had said, and there would always be waves. During his visit to Calcutta, Prabhupada had also spoken of his plans for Mayapur. Naranarayan had built a scale model of the building ISKCON would construct on the newly acquired property. And Prabhupada had shown it to all his guests, and he asked them to help. Seeing Prabhupada's absorption in this project, Giriraj had volunteered to help in any way required. It seemed that 2 things you want most, Giriraj had asked, are for the books to be distributed and to build a temple at Mayapur. Yes, Prabhupada had said, smiling, yes, thank you. When Prabhupada arrived at the home of Mr. Ram Nivas Dandariya in New Delhi, a waiting reporter interviewed him. I understand, said the reporter, that by Krishna you mean some eternal principle. I do not mean a principle, Prabhupada replied. I mean a person like you and me. Prabhupada was explaining Lord Krishna as the Supreme Person when suddenly silence began sounding. Blackout, blackout, cried the reporter and others in the house. War between Pakistan and India had been imminent for weeks. In 1970, that's that war happened, right? Something? 71, yeah. And air raid drills and warning were now commonplace in Delhi. Sir, the reporters spoke tensely in the darkened room. This is the presence of reality. We are being threatened by this fight with Pakistan. The siren is the ugly reality coming for us. We are always in the ugly reality, Prabhupada said. 24 hours a day. Suppose there is no blackout. Still, if you go in the street, there's no guarantee that you will get home. In this way, you are always in the ugly reality. Why do you say only this blackout? This is just one of the features of the ugly reality, that's all. So, I forgot when I read. Immediately, okay. So yeah, after he was quarantined in Bombay, he left for Calcutta. This is giving again the background, what he did after he came to South from Africa. So he went to Calcutta, and the temple location at Albert Road. That is actually Prabhupada is saying, because Prabhupada lived there. That's the Sahab section, European section, because those days when British was ruling, there are two separate sections. One is, the British quarters are different and the local Bengalis are different place. So that place they occupied where Britishers used to live. And now he's saying that I'm bringing the Sahs back to Sahab quarter. I'm bringing Europeans, Americans back to their quarters. So he said that never give up this place. He was so happy to have that. So now the complaint comes. What is that? Devotees are complaining they're mismanaged and they're not getting proper diet because they don't have proper income. And it comes to Prabhupada, says, they're saying, we are following your will. Prabhupada, this is not my will. I want devotees to live happy. I want all the facilities to be given. This thing is still now is going on. Devotees are complaining, in Vrindavan also. Staying together is not always very easy, but for higher purpose. So Prabhupada want the management should do, and he established the democratic election of the temple officer, what should be done. So that will solve the problem. Anyway, so during his visit to Calcutta, Prabhupada also spoke about plans for Mayapur, and Narayan Prabhu had built to scale up the model of the ISKCON. He showed everybody, and Prabhupada said, please everyone support. I think when we say everyone means all the devotees who are working in different projects, Bombay, Delhi, and wherever they're working, they should support this project. So Giriraj Maharaj is confirming that he wanted two priorities. One is distributing your books, and second is Mayapur temple. Prabhupada is satisfied. He said, yes, that's correct. Now in Delhi, at Ram Nivas Dandaya in New Delhi, a reporter was waiting. He said, do you mean Krishna is the eternal principle? Prabhupada said, no, I did not mean a principle. He's a person. He's a person like you and me. He's a supreme person. Then now in the situation of siren comes, in those days, we are lucky we don't have this experience. But it looks like with war happens, there's silence, everyone hides in their own place or something like that. I remember something. I was not born that time though. So I remember something like that. So he's saying, reporter is saying, this is what happens, then how, this is the reality. Prabhupada said that's the reality is every day. This is not just silent. Their life is in danger every moment of our life. That's the ugly reality, Prabhupada says. Reporter says, yeah.
Yes, but at the moment, Prabhupada, you do not realize that you are an ugly reality 24 hours a day. Padam padam yad vipadam. There is danger at every step. Reporter, I know, sir, but this is collective, national danger. Have you anything to offer us as a remedy? Prabhupada, Christian consciousness is our only remedy. Take to this process and you will be happy. Reporter, sir, I think someone should go out to Yahya Khan, the president of Pakistan. Prabhupada, what benefit will you derive by going to Yahya Khan? Reporter, someone is out to kill me. Prabhupada, but suppose Yahya Khan does not kill you, will you be safe? Then what is the use of going to Yahya Khan? You will die today or tomorrow. If you want to save yourself, then go to Krishna. That is our proposition. Even if you go to Yahya Khan and he does not fight, then you mean to say that you will live forever. What is the use of flattering Yahya Khan? Flatter Krishna so that you must maybe save perpetually. Why don't you do that? Reporter, I was only thinking in terms of collective security. I can see your point. Prabhupada, you should know that you're always in danger. Reporter, yes, sir, we agree. The late Einstein said the same thing. Prabhupada, that is our position. And Krishna says, I will save you. Therefore, let us go to Krishna. Why go to Yahya Khan? Reporter. Simply because he's disturbing us, that's all. Prabhupada. Your mind is always disturbing you all the time because it is always with you. Your body is always with you. Are you not suffering from bodily pains? Why don't you go to Yahya Khan to cure your pains? You're always in danger. Why don't you realize that? Reporter. We realize that this is a national disaster. Prabhupada, these are symptoms. People are trying to give a patchwork cure for the disease. We are giving the supreme cure. This is a difference. No patchwork cure will help you. You need a complete cure.
This one interesting.
Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoveti tatvata tvakta deham punanjanma neti mam eti sorjuna. The cure is no more repetition of birth and death. That is what we want. That is the benefit of Krishna consciousness. Yam prapyana nivartante tad dhama paramam mama. If you go to Krishna, then you don't come back again to this material world. So the reporter continues saying, but at the moment, because it's a national disaster, he's trying to say that isn't this only ugly reality? But Prabhupada says that he's not realizing that everyone is in an ugly reality 24 hours a day. The material world is an ugly reality. And Prabhupada quotes part of a verse, padam padam yad vipadam, saying that there's danger at every step. The reporter continues saying that this is a national danger, so you have anything to offer us? And as a remedy, and Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is the only remedy. But then
reporter's point is we should take shelter of Yahya Khan kind of nonsense.
So reporter says then because Yahya Khan is president of Pakistan, he's fighting India, he said someone should go there. And Prabhupada's asking what's the benefit, and they say someone should kill him. Someone else.
Yeah. Which one? Someone is out to kill me, means because you're trying to save your life.
So, but Prabhupada said, what's the use of going to Yahya? Even if he does not kill you, someone else will kill you. You will die today or tomorrow. You just want, the point is to go back to Krishna, not to just stay in this material world. Because one doesn't live forever. One will have to die one day or another. So what is the use of flattering Yahya Khan? Better to flatter Krishna so that you may be saved perpetually. So the reporter is slowly kind of understanding that he was thinking in terms of only collective security, and that he's slowly seeing Prabhupada's point. And Prabhupada says that you should always know that you are always in danger. And Prabhupada is saying that this is our position and that our only remedy is to serve Krishna, because Krishna says he will save you. So therefore, go to Krishna, then go to Yahya Khan. But reporter is saying because Yahya Khan is the root cause of this fight, reporter says that he wanted to go there because Yahya Khan is disturbing them. But Prabhupada explains that the mind is actually always disturbing you, although your body is disturbing you, because aren't you suffering from bodily pains? This is why don't you go to Yahya Khan to cure your bodily pains? Why doesn't he realize that he's always in danger? Reporter continues saying, because this is a national disaster. And Prabhupada saying these are just symptoms. People are trying to patch these small fights, but Prabhupada, the Krishna consciousness, is giving the supreme cure, which is doing devotional service to Krishna and going back to Godhead. You need a complete cure. And Prabhupada quotes the verse from Bhagavad Gita. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoveti tatvata tattva deham punarjanma neti mameti sarjana. And Prabhupada says the cure is, the verse says, cure is that no more repetition of birth and death. And that is what you want. And that is only possible through Krishna consciousness, which is the benefit of it. Continue saying, Yam prapyana nav nivartante tad dhama param mama. If you go back to Krishna, you won't come back to this material.
AJ?
Okay. Reporter. Sir, mine was a very hypothetical question. Suppose 100 pure, saintly, Krishna-conscious people are meditating or discussing together, and someone comes along and drops the bomb. Prabhupada. Those who are Krishna-conscious are not afraid of bomb. When they see a bomb coming, they think that Krishna desired a bomb to come. Krishna-conscious person is never afraid of anything. Yeah. Bayam Divitapanam Sata Sat.
You did a good job.
Winging it. One who has the conception that something cannot exist outside of Krishna is afraid. On the other hand, one who knows that everything is coming from Krishna has no reason to be afraid. The bomb is coming, he says. Krishna is coming. That is the vision of the devotee. He thinks, Krishna wants to kill me with a bomb. That is all right. I will be killed. That is Krishna consciousness. When the reporter asked if the Vaishnava would die without fighting, Prabhupada said that the Vaishnava would fight, but only under the direction of Krishna. And he cited Arjuna and Hanuman as examples. He continued to explain Krishna consciousness as the only solution. The blackout ended. A few of Prabhupada's disciples had organized the New Delhi Pandal program like the public festivals Prabhupada had already introduced in India. Tamal Krishna, Tejas, and Gurudasa had enlisted the help of important Delhi men, including the mayor and members of New Delhi's management and reception committee. These persons had granted permission and issued letters of introduction to others whom the devotees had then approached for donations. The devotees found everyone they met sympathetic to Srila Prabhupada. They respected him, especially after meeting him. Some disagreed philosophically, yet all were impressed by Prabhupada's converting Westerners to Hindu Dharma and God consciousness. And they had genuine respect for Prabhupada's worldwide propagation of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada had great stature among the Indians as a sadhu. Speaking only on the basis of the scriptures, he exhibited full surrender to Lord Krishna. He was above politics and sectarianism. He was fully spiritual and commanded respect. Everyone, regardless of personal philosophies or practices, seemed to accept him as a true representative of Indian culture and a genuine sadhu and guru. So the reporter is still kind of pushing a little bit and trying to understand more. And he says, it's like, hey, this is a hypothetical question, but if you have a bunch of, you have 100 devotees that are sitting there and they're singing or meditating or discussing, and someone drops a bomb on them, and Prabhupada says right there, we're not afraid. We're not afraid of the bomb. When they see the bomb coming, we just go, Krishna wanted us to die via a bomb. So, as a result of that, they're never afraid of anything. And, you say, you know what, the bomb's coming, Krishna's coming, Krishna wants me gone. That's the way it is. So the guy says, well, would you fight? Would a Vaishnava fight? Prabhupada says, yeah, we'd fight if Krishna commanded it. So if it was Krishna's, direction, we would fight. And he, references Arjuna and Hanuman. And, he just keeps saying, he's like, look, this is the only solution to all of these problems. And then the blackout ended. So Prabhupada's disciples had ordered a Pandal program like the ones that, were done in India. And that's when, Prabhupada was speaking to 20,000, 30,000 people a night. And, so the devotees had gone out and met with important local men like the mayor and other committee members. And they introduced the devotees to other important people who, made donations. And what's nice is that they say, like, everybody that they talked to was at least sympathetic to Prabhupada. They respected Prabhupada, even if they disagreed, with Krishna consciousness or disagreed with his philosophies. They all held him in high regards because he was able to introduce the Western world to Hinduism and Krishna consciousness. So they and also spreading the Bhagavad Gita. So they viewed him as a sadhu, and the fact that he didn't really delve into politics or things like that, he stuck to the scriptures, he stuck to the literature and the scriptures. They respected him for that reason as a guru. So you're on mute there, Krishna.
Sure, thank you. Your vision, when I'm speaking in mute. That's good. Thank you so much. I think it is a wonderful reading and wonderful progress. It's 8:44. Thank you for your services for Janmashtami and everything. We'll meet tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.